We are back. It's the Joe Holger Show presented by PrizePicks. Locks of the week, position by position. These are players that we have to have exposure to on DraftKings NFL Week 15. I got to start listening to Reeves a little bit more too. We figure out this like every single year, like December rolls around and he just is humming no matter what. It's like, I think it's like this is like the sweet spot of the year where like he's just so data driven on his approach from a matchups perspective that he just like dials it in like towards like the midway point of the year. It's I guess got to start tailing him more too. And
well, we get more information. And that's
yeah,
the biggest
exactly.
thing. Like so, like the APA column, which is adjusted points allowed, I have over at the Athletic. It's strongest not until probably about week 6 or 7, and
Makes
even then,
sense.
like by the time like 8, 9, 10, like it's even stronger because you just have all that extra information.
Makes total sense. All right, well, let's jump into the quarterback position. Interesting week. A matchup that we've been targeting pretty much all year is this Washington Commanders team. So Matthew Stafford at 6K definitely stands out. So happy to see him on your list first.
Yeah, I think he's going to be chalk too, mostly because at 6K is just kind of a crazy price for how he's been playing. I mean, he just went and played the Ravens with weather and had a great game, and that was a big concern. But outside of that, he's been rolling on top of it. And let's talk about more data. How about that? The Commanders, how about this? They're number 1 in opponents' play per game. They're number 1 in opponents' yards per play. They're number 2 in opponents' points per drive, and they're number 2 in touchdown to drive percentage, all since week 9. And it's actually top 5 even if you go throughout the entire season. Oh, and by the way, they're also dead last in pressure in the quarterback. So, I don't think you can get much better than that. The only metric that they stand up bad against is that their pace of play for theirs is like it limit things a little bit because they do drive as much. Okay. But you get more plays like this if you look at the ability to score on both sides. So I think there'll be some people that kind of get like sneaky and think they're being sneaky and go to the other side of this with Sam Howell and Terry McLaurin. I don't even mind it, maybe in bigger fields, but the biggest obvious one here is with Cooper Kupp not being hurt and playing so well in that game, Puka Nacua. This is kind of what we got that brief glimpse of with Stafford when they were first all together before Stafford got banged up a little bit and then Kupp got banged up a little bit. But this is what we have in the Commanders, as you mentioned. We've been attacking this matchup for how long? And just going right back to it.
Yeah, I'm with you. A quarterback's weird this week because I don't think that well, it's difficult to build lineups with Josh Allen and Dak Prescott. Obviously, that game stands out, 50.5 point total versus some of these other ones. But honestly, we just tried to do it with Reeves, and we just like weren't really we didn't love the lineup that we were building with those guys. We ended up mixing back and forth with Josh Allen and Dak. Ended up on a Dak team, but I kind of like this like 6K-ish range this week. So Stafford, you mentioned Howell probably in that conversation, but if you pay up a little bit more for Brock Purdy at 6,800, that's another one that still continues to be extremely strong. So let's talk about him.
How is he 68? So just play Stafford, but if you're not going to, just play Brock Purdy. I almost feel like, you and I has joked for years because you would give me permission to play Barkley. I would give you permission to play Christian McCaffrey. At this point, it's like just give permission to just how many times have we said Brock Purdy now? Let's look at the game log, by the way. How about 24, 24, 29, we'll round up to 30, that 11.5 game against Seattle, and then 32 and 25. Like I don't know much more to say. He's got a better rate than Dak. You see that whole argument about the MVP being Brock Purdy versus Dak Prescott, but the touchdowns are just behind him over the past couple of weeks since Dak's been on that run. Brock Purdy is basically second in every stat that you want to throw out, but he's doing it with fewer passes, just super efficient. And if you look at Arizona, not quite as good as Washington, but they are. I'm looking right now on an opponent's points per game, yards per play, all those numbers. They're still top third in all of those. And the biggest one is, again, to go back to the touchdown to drive percentage, they're allowing the 6th highest. And Brock Purdy, with how efficient he is, I mean, honestly, the $800 difference might even just have me go back to Brock Purdy because he's been so good to us.
Yeah, it's an absolutely great spot. Yeah, 27th in yards per attempt allowed, 32nd completion percentage allowed. So like we're even going to get the efficiency bump here from a matchup perspective, which we already have with this 49ers team pretty frequently. So let's move forward from quarterback because I think both of those guys are kind of the two that I'm zeroing in on as well. Running back also seems kind of clear this week. I'm actually giving away my Ezekiel Elliott signed helmet over on Twitter, so make sure you guys check out that giveaway. Nice. But 5,800, again, just from a volume perspective, this also just feels way too cheap. So
I'm glad you brought that up because that was the volume perspective what I was going to bring up.
There you go.
Is that over those 2 games without Ramondre Stevenson, 5th in running back touch percentage, 83.3, 26.0 team target percentage. That would rank number 1 this year. That's in front of Alvin Kamara for the amount of his team's targets that he's getting. Just let that sink in for everybody out there. He's getting over a quarter of the targets are going to Zeke. And I know it's the Patriots offense, which would be the pushback. And we're like, but here's the thing. Even against the Chiefs, if you're like, oh my God, they might get down. That arguably good. Yeah. Good. Let him throw to Zeke 10 times in this game because that's what we want, especially in PPR and half-point PPR. But I mean, especially on DraftKings with that. So I'm just going to pure volume. It was the argument we made for 2 weeks in a row, Zach Moss, and I know that one went bad 2 weeks in a row. It's part of the reason our lineups didn't hit as good as they should have. But honestly, I wanted to bring Zach Moss into this conversation because he had a touchdown call back in both games. We'd be having a completely different conversation. People would still be ranking Zach Moss inside their top 10. And I'm not saying, he didn't get the touchdowns, but the reason we do this is because we're chasing the volume here. And it's not like a Joshua Kelly chasing the volume where we know they're not good running backs. We've seen Zach Moss and Ezekiel Elliott perform. So if you're going to get that kind of target team touch percentage where you're talking 85, 90% of it, honestly, unless you're 7K, you're not even having a second thought about it.
Yeah, I had a nice little ladder with Zeke in that game, 59.5 rushing yards, over 2.5 receptions, and I think it was like 14 fantasy points. It might have been less than that. But yeah, we're giving away the Zeke helmet, letting the Zeke helmet go before it's worth zero. Jake, that's the thought process there. So another spot, if you're willing to pay up a little bit more for volume, I mean, man, Kyren Williams, like you can make an argument that he has like top 3, top 2 like roles in the NFL right now at a running back position. So let's talk about Kyren for a sec.
Yeah, you just talked about it. So we'll go back to the Washington matchup, but let's talk about Kyren Williams as you just mentioned. Top 2 roles. Top 2 is your right answer because if you just take the games he's been active, the only running back in football in points, touches, performance, like whatever you want, the only one is Christian McCaffrey. He is number 2 behind Christian McCaffrey in the games that he's been played, and all the numbers that you want that are important to us. Like I said, touches, that volume, but points per game, he's right behind Christian McCaffrey, which is insane to think about. So Kyren Williams, yes, it's tough to see that and pay up for it, but you're getting $1,100 discount from Alvin Kamara. And I don't know if the Giants defense all of a sudden woke up this year, but I'm not that afraid of them because we still like the passing game work. But I mean, it's an $1,800 discount from Christian McCaffrey. I'm not calling Kyren Williams Christian McCaffrey, but an $1,800 discount. And then you look right behind him, Barkley's $200 cheaper, and I would still play him. And then you go to the situation with the Dolphins and Rachaad White, who I do kind of like, but even Rachaad White's at 7K because of the respect, because we're talking about another guy with that kind of volume. But the offense in the matchup is so much better for him than facing Green Bay, which isn't terrible for Rachaad White. But the point being is if I get into this conversation where I'm going to pay up for a running back, you look at it, I'm not doing Derrick Henry at 69, Pacheco's out, likely again, and all these other you got situations that could make them go sideways where Kyren Williams, what's going to happen? He's not going to lose the ball whether they're behind or ahead, and we really don't expect them to be behind.
Yep. This is a tough game to get into from a props perspective. Everything's pretty high just because the matchup, everyone knows the matchup. The Puka Nacua one is the one that might be a little bit low, so check out that one. But let's talk about Puka from a DFS perspective. So if you're paying $7,300, I mean, this is still a really, really nice spot, obviously, but I think it's probably worth the price tag as well. So I like him a little bit more in DFS than props, I guess.
Yeah, I would agree with you. The last 2 games, 8 targets, 7 targets, 5 and 4 receptions for 84 and 105 and then touchdown. Obviously, we want that kind of game against Cleveland, but let's talk about that again. Let's talk about the 2 matchups. The Cleveland Browns and the Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore, and go back to that weather. This dude, 15 targets, almost 200 yards and a touchdown against the Browns and Ravens defenses. Do you think he's going to have any problem doing this against the Commanders? Honestly, if you've been watching it seems to like vary. If you watch both those games, and I know last week Kupp left briefly, but I mean, if you look overall at them and watch them, like it just kind of seems that Stafford trusts them both the same. Like there was times where when Kupp first came back, it was like, ooh, Nacua is the first option. But I'm going to compare this to something at the beginning of the year. Remember when we were excited about Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers, that funneled target percentage?
You know where the ball's going.
Yep. And that's why we like Stafford. That's why we like Nacua and Kupp. I think they're both in play. I think Nacua might be a little lesser owned because of the attention that Kupp brings and the excitement for Kupp. And that's why I'm leaning a little bit this range. And if you look at some of the outside plays, a little bit more upside. I know Cooper Kupp can do the same, but if you're looking for the upside about after that, Washington obviously gives up everything they possibly can. But I just like Nakua for that play. It's the over 50%. Oh, I mean, we're talking almost 60% of the targets are going to 2 players, and that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I think that's actually like kind of an argument to where like DeMarcus Robinson at 3,600 might be kind of bad chalk. I think he's going to be like 20% owned. So
I think so too. I'm with you.
I think I like all these other guys, like just paying up for all these other guys that we've talked about over DeMarcus Robinson. We'll see where that lands by the end of the week. But
real quick, sorry, yeah. I wanted to because just for perspective, think about it this way: if Tutu Atwell was at that price, how excited would people be? And that's the comparison. It's just he just happened to hit last week, and that one big play is really what made the day. And people like, so I'm glad you brought that up because it's the perspective of what just happened. But let's just pretend it's Tutu Atwell, and you wouldn't be that excited about him even at that price.
Yeah, we used to do this a lot. We just remove the name from the player and just show like stats like side by side on which one you would prefer, and then like you end up landing on like these Adam Thielen type of players over like Stephon Diggs over like the last X amount of time, just because we're so blinded by these names at times to where sometimes it is nice to be a little bit more objective on that. So I guess what I would prefer to do is get up a little bit at wide receiver to Jaden Reed at 4,900, and I know he's on your list, so I'll let you talk through that one.
Yeah, Jaden Reed, the big thing is obviously this is contingent on no Christian Watson, because Christian Watson being back just kind of ruins the whole Reed, and Romeo Doubs is kind of falling off here. But if you look at Packers, this is a matchup situation that's one of the best to go back to APA. I mean, we're looking at, let's see, where is Green Bay? So Tampa Bay, Green Bay, we know the Bucks can't stop anybody. They're third. They're only behind Washington. So the APA calculation, this is over the entire wide receivers points per game allowed. This is what they average when you account for strength of their opponent. So basically, I don't want to sound like I'm talking now because everybody watching this probably knows, but just to clarify, just in case, because it's my calculation, it's the same you've seen on other sites. So like if you faced freaking Patrick Mahomes every single week, well, maybe not this year, but if you face Patrick Mahomes every single week, you're going to give up more points if you face Will Levis every single week. And that's this kind of stuff it accounts for. So anyway, to go back to all this, Washington's number one in allowing 40.7 adjusted points allowed to wide receivers. The Giants are middle of the pack because they've been playing better the second half of the season. So it wasn't like it was like, oh, Jordan Love fell on his face in a good matchup. It was actually kind of middle of the road. Tampa Bay, just throw against them. Throw, because you can't run against them. And I don't even care if Aaron Jones is back. All I care about is no Christian Watson. No Christian Watson. Jaden Reed is going to be a lock in my lineups, also because they use him a few times out of the backfield.
Yeah, really, really bad price, in my opinion, for how he's being used. So with you on that, DeAndre Hopkins is someone that, and just in general, I've been on some unders with the Titans this year, and I keep getting buried because of these big plays. And Nuke has been a big part of that, right? So 6,200 for DeAndre Hopkins, like just looking at some of the underlying data too, like the weighted opportunity rating so strong for Nuke, and for whatever reason, I guess pretend that this doesn't exist, but top 10 in weighted opportunity rating, even on this Tennessee offense. So thoughts on Nuke this week at 6,200?
Yeah, it really comes down to a decent matchup. It's not the best. It's not what we used to think. But if you're looking at it, so I put this in my column over the Athletic for the year. Only Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams, A.J. Brown, and DJ Moore have a team air yard percentage than DeAndre Hopkins. Now, again, you can talk about the Titans. Some of that quality is not there compared to some of the other teams. But he's 43% of his team's air yards percentage. That's almost half. That's insane. It's the volume perspective. I just wanted to throw him out there that if you want to pay up and kind of maybe be a little bit different. I know we're talking locks, but I think that he is a lock if you want to get into this range that you could pay for, that kind of differentiates a little bit from some of the other names in this range. I just wanted to throw him out there. Like, it's not just off the 1 week play from last week. I think that Hopkins is always intriguing. You mentioned it. Like, I did it a couple times too. I think I did it twice. I was like, you know what? I'm going to take the under on Hopkins both times. Like, I mean, it wasn't even the end of the game and he already hit the over. I'm like, why am I even doing this?
I think I've taken both. I think I've taken the under on Levis and the under on Hopkins. Like, I think I've done it 2 or 3 times this year, and I don't know if I've hit one of them, maybe once. So yeah, like, I don't know. Every year I have blinders for one team. Like last year it was overs for Atlanta and they just never got there. This year it's like, I'm just for whatever reason, just not bullish enough on Tennessee and some of these big plays. So that's a tough one.
Let's talk about the wide receivers. If you can get to Ayuk and Debo, because my prize picks is Debo Samuel for this reason. If you can get to them, because obviously Brock Purdy, they've actually maybe that's what they're doing. They're just trying to like lull you in and be like, hey, you do want all 49ers. I mean, we obviously know we would love to. It's making it tough with the wide receivers now after doing that triple stack. How many weeks did we do it? But I've mentioned this to you a few weeks ago. I'm going to continue to hit this point home. So Ayuk and Debo Samuel both do great. They do great. But when it comes to man, Ayuk is clearly the better play. He's at 3.75 yards per route run versus 3.03 versus zone. Okay, it's a bump. It's not, but here's the biggest thing. Samuel versus man goes from 1.32 to 3.33, which is huge. On the flip side, against zone, they're about the same. So, that's the thing is like, who's the better bump when you look at it? So I'm looking at Samuel, and what do the Cardinals do? Sixth most zone is that Ayuk gets the bump versus man, Samuel gets the bump versus zone. So I'm playing Samuel, and if you can get to it at that PrizePicks price, 58.5.
Yep, 58.5.
I even like Ayuk still, honestly.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, there's another one here that you had, Joe Mixon. This line's actually 57.5 rushing yards right now. So do you still like that one?
Still on the under? Yeah, I'm still hitting the under on that. Okay. There's only been, let me go back. I know that when it was at 60.5, there's only 2 running backs that have done that in this matchup, and none since week 6.
Nice.
That 57.5, you might get a 58 in there somewhere. It might be one additional running back. Okay. But I also think with Jake Browning and the usage of Chase Brown and the matchup on top of this, which if you look at it, it's been bad for running backs the entire year. I still like the under on Mixon. Mixon's actually been making his day in the passing game. Yep. So that's why I don't like the combined under, because I actually think he could still even hit the combined over because of the receiving yards.
This offense is just totally different when Joe Burrow's not there. It's not like this like vertical downfield offense. It's just like, let's get the ball into like our good players' hands and with like little dump offs and shorter passes. So like Mixon's been getting there kind of on some of that stuff after the catch too. So I'm with you. I think the rushing yards one is the one. If you're going to take an under, that makes a ton of sense. So if you do want to take this, you can use code Holka, get your free $100 bet. They'll pay you $100 just to take this one, which is pretty cool. Just take it. Yeah. And also, just going to mention quickly, we did roll out multiple sports for the PropDrop newsletter. So going to start leaning into some basketball stuff, baseball stuff, hockey stuff. It's one of the things that everyone keeps asking about. So there's a link in the description for all 3 of those. So check that out if you guys are interested in getting some other sports in the prop world. So let's move on.
It still holds, by the way. I looked.
Yeah,
I looked. It still holds. There's still only 2 that have ever even gone. So the third is Pacheco went for 55. The other 2 is Foreman went for 65, and Swift went for 175. So I mean, even if I don't want to throw out a game, but like if you take away Swift, they've only let one running back even top 55, and it was only 65 yards rushing against them.
Okay. Let's talk about tight end. There's a few guys here like in this 3K to 3,700 range. So I'll let you walk through this because I think we have 3 guys on the list here. So what do we do with these tight ends this week? Because there's a lot of them.
Oh, I see. No, I actually wanted 2 of them, and then actually
well,
I forgot to fill in my defense. This is I put them. One's in the defense. So there's 2 that I like: is Logan Thomas at 3,700 and Tucker Kraft at 3,000. I think Tucker Kraft. This goes back to the Watson situation. I like him a little bit less because just another option to take away. But attack Tampa Bay, and then what have we been doing for basically since like week 7-ish? Is just play your tight ends against the Rams. Holy crap. So if you want to look into this game, Logan Thomas at 3,700, I think is a very strong play. Yeah, the Isaiah likely doesn't come into play because we don't have that on our slate.
There you go. That'll do it. You can't build a lineup with a guy that's not there. So let's go ahead and build a lineup, Jake. And if you have any thoughts on defense, I think a lot of people are just going to pile into the Browns. I think the Jets are interesting if you wanted to pay down a little bit more. What were your thoughts on defense as we build a team here?
Yeah, I think the Browns are super popular. Again, with Justin Fields, if he doesn't get the runs, do we get the possible turnovers? You know what? I know a lot of people, what you just mentioned, are looking at those, but I don't think the Cowboys are out of play now that they're 3,200 because Josh Allen just throwing interceptions.
They'll turn it over.
And you can still give up 20, 30 real life points and still put up fantasy points. Totally. So I don't think for 3,200, I don't think they're the worst option to possibly roll into this week.
Okay. I'm down with that. Let's throw the Cowboys in there for now since they're a little bit cheaper. We could move up if we need to. But what are your thoughts on this team? Are we building a Stafford squad, or do you have any other? Or we could do Purdy as well. What are your thoughts?
Let's see if we can do Purdy, and then we'll come back to this. Let's see why not.
You know what's crazy, Jake? Last week was the first week ever that all 3 guests have picked the exact same quarterback to build around. So we built 3 Justin Fields teams last week, which ended up being pretty good. You guys were just all over the crab on that one too. But we did build a Stafford team with Reeves. So we're gonna build a Purdy team with you. It's only fair.
Yeah. See, I'm good there. Even perfect.
There you go. Okay, cool. So let's get. So I see. It sounds like Debo. Debo. Okay. Let's get Debo in there.
We got Ayuk at 72. Oh, you can throw Jaden Reed in there too, because we're gonna need
some savings. I like the Reed stuff for sure. I guess, what do you want to grab from this Washington and Rams game? There's just so many options.
Yeah, I would, since we're not going, let's see if we can, because I was going to say, if we're going Stafford, I would look, 4 is a lot, unless obviously it's a tournament. So since we're not, let's see, I don't think we're going to be able to, but let's see, Kyron.
Get him in there.
Kyron in there, can we get, I don't think we can get Nakua in there, because that leaves us 3,800 for the flex. I kind of jumped ahead of you. I put Kraft in.
Okay,
by the way.
In there. Okay.
Put Zeke in.
Okay. Got Zeke
at 3,800 puts you in the range for DeMarcus Robinson.
Who do you have a wide receiver right now? Because I'm missing a wide receiver. I got Debo, Reed.
And then I put Nakua in to see what it would do.
You got Puka in there. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, I mean, you could, but you can't.
3,800, you could still play, DeMarcus Robinson. You could
DeMarcus Robinson.
Juju,
if you put in Curtis Samuel for the bring back. I like Curtis Samuel just the way that he's been used. And now look at that. You're in the range.
Then who would we take out?
We took out the Nakua.
Nakua. Got it. Okay, so we got 6,500. Yeah, now we're cooking here.
Oh, James Cook. And now we got the Cowboys in there. DeAndre Hopkins. There you go.
Nuke Hopkins. Easy game.